Alright, so let's break this down. There's a lot to unpack here about the recent election, especially with how misinformation played such a big role in influencing people. And yeah, it seems this whole thing was kind of fueled by sources outside of the US, as well as some prominent figures within the country. Okay, let's go through it piece by piece to really see what was going on. So first off, Americans headed to the polls while facing a storm of misinformation. Much of this, it's suspected, originated from Russian sources. Sounds familiar, right? But what's different this time is how direct and intense it all seems. The FBI actually had to issue warnings about fake videos and fabricated threats, which were aimed at causing disruptions and even intimidating people from voting. Yeah, you heard that right. Imagine logging onto social media and seeing some video supposedly from the FBI telling you to stay home due to threats. It's designed to make people feel unsafe about voting. And that's not all. This environment of tension was also stirred up domestically by supporters of Donald Trump, and Trump himself wasn't exactly stepping back either. Elon Musk, the billionaire everyone's always talking about, actually joined in too. He shared a video that seemed to align with the QAnon ideology, which is pretty out there. Now, QAnon is known for promoting conspiracy theories, and seeing someone as influential as Musk support something like that? It's a big deal. It gets people talking and even questioning what's real and what's not. In this video that Musk posted, there was footage from the January 6th insurrection, set to Van Halen's Jump. I mean, that's a choice, right? But it wasn't just this one video. Musk had earlier posted something that echoed a debunked conspiracy theory from 2016, the whole Pizzagate thing. Yeah, Pizzagate was that bizarre idea about a secret child trafficking ring connected to a pizza place. Totally outlandish, but it still found traction online back then, and even now. And then there was Trump himself, who didn't hold back. On Tuesday, he claimed he had a big lead in the polls, even though that wasn't really the case. But that's not all. He cast doubts on voting machines, implying they might be unreliable. Right, we've heard him say similar things before, but this time it seemed almost part of a larger narrative that he and some of his supporters were pushing the idea that if he didn't win, it must be due to some kind of interference or fraud. Trump had already made claims about supposed cheating by Democrats in Pennsylvania. And then he went on to criticize how long it took to count votes in swing states, which, yeah, I mean, it can take time, but casting it as an outrage. Felt like he was trying to stir up frustration among his base. And it didn't stop there. Early on Election Day, Trump posted a video on his Truth Social platform where he criticized, get this, transgender athletes, specifically in boxing. In the video, he was saying that men could beat up women and win medals. Now, Trump used this as an example of how American values had supposedly declined under Biden's presidency. And he tied this whole issue to his opponent, Kamala Harris, right? You're probably thinking, what does this have to do with the election? But in a way, it's a tactic. It's all about creating an emotional reaction, getting people to feel like there's something fundamentally wrong that needs to be fixed. Meanwhile, in Georgia, there were disruptions at the polls due to what seemed like fake bomb threats. These threats targeted two specific polling places, Etris Community Center and Gullett Elementary School, both in Union City, near Atlanta. Now, it's worth mentioning that Union City is a predominantly black area, which makes it look like this could have been aimed at discouraging a community that would likely support Harris. Okay, so the local police in Georgia reported these threats, but here's the interesting part. Brad Raffensperger, Georgia's Secretary of State, said these non-credible threats actually originated from Russia. He even mentioned that it might have come from a Russian troll farm. It's not just about trying to mess up the election itself, it's about sowing distrust and getting Americans to question each other. These fake threats weren't limited to Georgia, either. Arizona, Michigan, and Maine also reported similar incidents, though thankfully none turned out to be real. In Arizona, for instance, the Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, said there were threats against 4 polling stations, but they were found to be unsubstantiated. He also pointed out that the origins of these threats might be Russian. Same story in Michigan and Maine. Fake bomb threats designed to scare voters, though all were eventually deemed non-credible. And then, just before Election Day, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, put out a statement. They warned that Russia, Iran, and China were all likely involved in trying to disrupt the election, but that Russia was the most active threat. According to the ODNI, Russian-linked influence actors were busy creating videos and fake articles. These materials weren't just random disinformation, they were specifically crafted to undermine the legitimacy of the election, instill fear in voters, and encourage the idea that Americans were turning on each other. Pretty sinister here? So, with all this going on, the FBI had to step up. They put out a statement saying a video that looked like an official FBI clip was actually fake. The video supposedly urged Americans to vote remotely because of a high terror threat at polling places. But nope, the FBI was clear it wasn't real, and it didn't reflect the actual safety of voting locations. Oh, and there was another fake video floating around too. This one showed a fabricated scenario of vote rigging, supposedly among incarcerated people. It suggested that officials in 5 prisons across Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona were working with a political party to rig votes. Again, the FBI said this was false. They emphasized there were 2 instances of its name and insignia being misused to promote these false election narratives, according to a report by USA Today. The bigger picture here is pretty clear. Disinformation, fueled by foreign actors and echoed by certain high-profile figures, was aimed at destabilizing trust in the democratic process. And the scary part: when people see these types of videos and posts from trusted or well-known figures, they're more likely to take them seriously. It's like we're in an age where the boundaries between reality and misinformation have been completely blurred, and people are left trying to make sense of it all.